So lots changed since the last time you saw me. Welcome back to another Five Nights at Freddy's theory, and today we're finally covering the second part to my FNaF timeline. But before we get to that part, let's talk about the elephant in the room. What happened to my hair? Well, me and a lot of other FNaF content creators put our hair on the line during the One More Night Against Cancer charity that Narrow Raven hosted. And because you guys crushed the goal to have me shave my head, I now have to hear you guys call me bald, until I grow my hair back. But what's more important than you guys just calling me bald, get it out of your system while I don't have hair, is that the Tiltify link should still be up for the next few days. So until this date right here, you'll be able to go to the Tiltify that I'll link down in the description, or you'll be able to scan this QR code in order to donate to the charity. Half of what is made during this event is going towards Tony, Narrow Raven's friend who was recently diagnosed with sarcoma, and the other half is going towards the American Cancer Society. Again, you only have until whatever day I have over here. I know it's a Tuesday coming up soon, but I don't know the date off the top of my head. So please, if you have anything and you're willing to donate, please do so. And now with that said, I think it's time that we move on to our timeline. So here's the FNaF timeline after the events of FNaF 6. Now, I probably could have released this timeline a few weeks ago, considering most of the things that are on this board haven't changed in the past few weeks, but I was waiting for one key piece of evidence to see if it was going to change the entire timeline. I was waiting for Escape the Pizzaplex. Now, the reason why I waited for Escape the Pizzaplex to release before I did this timeline is because the last time I did this timeline, part 1 that you're seeing right now, I didn't wait for Return to the Pit to release. So I was going off of information that I saw other theorists were talking about, saying that they only found 5 kids, which I thought was odd. Originally, I put 6 here because I know the first 2 versions of Into the Pit, the game and the novel, both said that there were 6 kids. So I originally wrote 6. But everyone was saying that there were only 5 in Return to the Pit. But the thing is, after reading the book myself, I did find a 6th kid. There's 1 kid that you could find in the backstage area on the first day that you go into the pit, as opposed to the 5 kids that you find 2 days later in that same backstage area. And I made a whole video on it after the first timeline went out. So we're saying that there are 6 kids involved with the missing children's incident. Now, Escape the Pizzaplex doesn't really seem to change that much of the timeline, unless, of course, you look at it with a very particular set of lenses. So we will talk about that when we reach Escape the Pizzaplex on the timeline, because it's a relatively newer book. You guys probably don't want any spoilers if you're going to read it yourself, so we're going to wait on talking about Escape the Pizzaplex until we reach this point. Now, we left our last timeline at FNaF 6 and Ultimate Custom Night, which is exactly where we're going to pick up this part of the timeline. Ultimate Custom Night, where we know that the one you should not have killed is torturing William Afton for all of eternity, except not exactly. Sure, the one you should not have killed is trying to torment Afton for as long as possible, but as long as possible is not as long as the one you should not have killed really wanted, because William Afton has some sort of plan B in mind. He manages to spread his agony all over, well, everything. Yes, this does mean that I believe that Frights and Tails are in the game's timeline, but they're not exactly one-to-one. Because as we saw with Security Breach's development, Scott gave Steel Wool a list of things that he wanted in the game without giving them too much detail into what he actually wanted. And because of that, we got Security Breach, which was apparently very far from what Scott's original intention was. I'm believing he did the exact same thing with the books. While the Frights books probably aren't as close to the original intention as he wanted, I'm believing he learned his lesson from the first project, Frights, and during the Tails stories, he got a little bit closer to what he actually wanted, with the newest series, the interactive novels, being the closest thing to what we're going to see in the games, but still not an exact one-to-one. Now, yes, technically what I just said is that the books aren't canon to the games, but they're the only thing that we have connecting from Ultimate Custom Night to the new games in the series. So this is going to be our backbone for trying to figure out what happens between these 2 eras. So starting with the man in room 1280, we learn that Afton spreads his agony on a bunch of Fazbear Entertainment stuff, which starts the rest of the Frights storyline. We then need to follow the Stitch Wraith stories until we get to the Afton amalgamation, where we learn that apparently Afton combines all that stuff that he spread his agony on to create a giant Afton monster. Now, the Afton amalgamation is important for this timeline because the amalgamation can apparently hurt people, causing them to have part of Afton's agony stuck inside of them. Now, in the story, we see that the Stitch Wraith removes the agony from these people so that it doesn't cause any further harm. But I don't think in this timeline that happens. I think Vanessa and Mr. Burrows get infected with the Afton amalgamation's agony, causing them to be the first two people to get infected with the new version of Afton. Now, look, give me like 2 seconds to explain myself, because I do know this sounds crazy, especially if you haven't seen the last video that I put out. This sounds absolutely bonkers. Vanessa has to get the Glitchtrap virus from Help Wanted 1, right? Well, not exactly, because in AR, we learned that somebody is sending these hard drives that contain the Mimic program to these two facilities, the AR facility and the VR facility. Silver Paracel and the Fun Time Services both get hard drives containing the Mimic 1 program. And we know this is the Glitchtrap virus that gets put into the game, and not just some version of the Mimic program, due to the fact that as soon as it's plugged into the game, Tape Girl immediately sees it as the Glitchtrap virus, which means that this had to be tampered with before it was put into the game to become the Glitchtrap virus. Not only does it seem like those hard drives were tampered with, it also seems like the events of Tape Girl from Help Wanted, along with the events of Vanessa from Special Delivery, are happening simultaneously. Both companies get their hard drives from Fazbear Entertainment and plug it into their system. Afterwards, they both seem to be getting infected with the Glitchtrap virus. Afterwards, we learn that Vanessa is talking about making a costume to her co-workers, and at the end of the Dreadbear DLC, we hear the reluctant follower say that she's made something for who we can only assume is Glitchtrap, and that he would like it. Now, we already know that Vanessa is already infected with the Glitchtrap virus at the point of Special Delivery, but if the events of Special Delivery are happening at the same time as Help Wanted's development, that means that Vanessa could not have gotten the Glitchtrap virus from Help Wanted. You see what I'm getting at here? Vanessa needs to get the Glitchtrap virus from somewhere other than the game. And the only conceivable thing that I can come up with is that the Afton amalgamation is containing Afton's agony and somehow infects not only Vanessa, but Mr. Burrows from the books. Now, most of you probably don't know who Mr. Burrows is, and I don't blame you. He only shows up in the books, but he is shown to be a very important character. He shows up in the story where we get the backstory to the Mimic, and he is known as the youngest chairperson on the Fazbear Entertainment board. And he's genius level smart, like graduating college at just 13 smart. Something about him is tingling my theory senses, and it starts with just his name. Burrow. That's what rabbits do. They burrow into the ground, and that alone gets him a huge connection to Afton for some reason. But then you add the whole genius level intellect on top of that, and then you start to see a pattern with him and Gregory. Both of these characters have huge parallels to one another. Mr. Burrows and Gregory both having huge connections to the Pizzaplex, Gregory apparently living in the Pizzaplex, and Mr. Burrows being a board member of the Pizzaplex. Both of them are super intelligent characters. Mr. Burrows graduated college at 13, and Gregory is able to hack into the Pizzaplex with ease, and they both have nicknames that are associated with rabbits. Gregory has Dr. Rabbit, and I guess Mr. Burrows isn't a nickname, that's his name, but still, Burrow is something that rabbits do. These characters are super connected because they're both being controlled by Glitchtrap. Now, after Vanessa and Mr. Burrows get infected with the agony of Afton, I think they get compelled to come back to the Pizzaplex's location. But this is way before the Pizzaplex is even built. So they arrive back to the FNaF 6 location, where they find the old pizzeria, the blob hiding inside, and deep down underneath the pizzeria, they find the imprisoned Mimic. Honestly, after looking at this bullet point right here might need to move after this bullet point, but I'm not rewriting it. So, Mr. Burrows starts Fazbear Entertainment up once again, and this time as an LLC. That way, he is safe from losing everything that he owns. And Vanessa and him use the Mimic's programming in order to speed things along, to try and get Fazbear Entertainment up back to its former glory, maybe even better than its former glory. Now, at this point, Fazbear Entertainment is really small, especially compared to what it used to be. And Mr. Burrows has big plans for this place. So he comes up with a strategy in order to try and get the public to remember Fazbear Entertainment, but not for all those bad things that happened a few years ago, and to try and make a lot of animatronics so people will be entertained. The only problem is the plan doesn't really involve a building yet, but he has a genius way of getting around that, or at least something inside of him gives him the idea. Mr. Burrows comes up with the idea in order to hire an indie game developer in order to make games off of the stories of Fazbear Entertainment. He hires Steve Snodgrass in order to make these games, and when they come out, Fazbear Entertainment then badmouths Steve Snodgrass in order to try and make it seem like he was a rogue indie game developer. Afterwards, Mr. Burrows then sends out 2 more contracts. One to Silver Paracel Games, who are instructed to make a VR game based off of the rogue indie game developers game so they can poke fun at their past, or whatever hand unit says there. And one to Fazbear Funtime Services, who are instructed to make animatronics based off of the old animatronics and deliver them to customers so they can have parties or whatever. That way they can have income without even having an actual building yet. Now, after sending out those contracts, Mr. Burrows thinks, you know what, maybe I should send that Mimic 1 program that me and Vanessa found. I think that'll help speed up these companies along. That way we can get our stuff even faster. But maybe I should, do a little tweaking to the Mimic 1 program. That way it'll run even better. And there's definitely nothing inside of Mr. Burrows right now that's trying to convince him to do this. No. This is all of his own volition. He wants to try and program this thing to have bunny ears and wave at you and smile all creepy and things like that. He wants this, not something that's trapped inside of his head. And this is the point where we hit the first game in our timeline, or I should say first 2 games, because 2 games are happening simultaneously. Special Delivery and Help Wanted. Well, I guess the games themselves are not happening. The emails that we read in Special Delivery and the Tape Girl recordings that we hear are happening at this time. So we technically haven't hit the games themselves, but we hit the pre-game. Does that make sense? So, Mr. Burrows decides that he's going to send a personalized care package to each of these companies, each containing a hard drive with the Mimic 1 program in it. But one of these care packages has something else in it, an old mask that he found that he assumed that Fazbear Entertainment used for old VR stuff that they might have had back in the day. So he sends it off to Silver Parasol so they could use it on their new game. But what Mr. Burrows didn't realize is this wasn't just a VR mask he found, this was a Vanny mask, or at least an older version of it, because Fazbear Entertainment used to advertise these things as a friend that your kid could wear. Put the mask on and see your favorite animatronic, about this big, but they'd be able to follow you and talk to you no matter what. And the best part, parents would be able to communicate with their kids whenever they're not even home. Now, the only downside to these masks is that they had to kind of drill a chip into the kid's head in order to get it to work when they weren't wearing the mask, but it's fine. It was back in the 80s. Nobody really cared about safety back then. It was all about the fun. So Silver Parasol then uploads these hard drives into the game in order to speed up development. And surprisingly, it actually works. It starts completing a lot of the tasks that they were expecting would take a few weeks in mere minutes. The only downside is now there's an entity in the game that they weren't exactly expecting. So their quality assurance guy, Jeremy, decides to try and kick it out. But bad news for Jeremy, he doesn't exactly know what he's going against. This anomaly is much stronger than he realized. Every time he gets into this game, he loses a bit of himself without really realizing it first, and taking something else out of the game, thanks to that special mask that Fazbear Entertainment oh so willingly gave to them. It starts getting to the point where even Jeremy himself starts realizing that there's something wrong with him. He's going into these games and he's not jumping at anything. So he thinks that maybe that little prick that he felt a few days ago after he put on the mask, maybe that was more than just a prick. So he decides to take the mask off and use the guillotine paper shredder to remove the chip from his head. Now, Jeremy knows that something was wrong with him while he was helping develop the game. he doesn't exactly know how to put it into words, because saying that an anomaly that Fazbear Entertainment gave them just oh so happened to try and hypnotize him and take over his body, that sounds absolutely insane. But he knows that he needs to go after Fazbear Entertainment for the damages that they caused, especially to his face. So he decides to sue Fazbear Entertainment, and this one action causes Fazbear Entertainment to try and cut short all of their contracts. That means that Fazbear Entertainment stops the Funtime services and the development of Help Wanted. Funtime services stop immediately, but Fazbear Entertainment still needs to get on the good side of the public, especially after this lawsuit. So they decide to at least let Silver Parasol end the rest of their contract without renewing the next one, or finding somebody to take up the next contract, at least until these lawsuits are done. Now, since Fazbear Entertainment is ending the contract with Silver Parasol and they have the lawsuit with Jeremy going on, they're a little bit afraid that maybe the belongings that they gave them might have something to do with whatever Jeremy's trying to sue them for. So they decide to sneak into Silver Parasol in the middle of the night and take back all their belongings, including the hard drives containing Glitchtrap and that old Vanny mask that they gave them. Now, I know, once again, this timeline is sounding crazy because I'm saying that the Silver Parasol team had access to a Vanny mask, but if you think about it, Jeremy is the only one from the Silver Parasol team to get infected with the Glitchtrap virus. Everyone on the team was interested in the anomaly whenever it started showing up. Tape Girl even says that everyone wanted to check it out and try and stop it. But Jeremy is the only one who has any side effects. Jeremy is the only one who goes to the paper shredder in order to do anything drastic. He's the only one that Glitchtrap targeted because he's the only one who wore the special mask that puts a chip into your head that gives Glitchtrap access to your body. And we can see this through what Tape Girl says and what Glitchtrap says. Tape Girl never acts any different throughout her tapes up until the last two that you find. And it's not because Tape Girl got infected with the Glitchtrap virus, it's because Glitchtrap learn to mimic her. You can even hear it whenever you see Glitchtrap in the lobby. He's slowing down what she's saying, but it's the exact same thing she says in the first recording that we hear from her. And then it just mimics that in order to create two more tapes that make it sound like you need to take all the pieces that she works so hard to keep separate and bring them back together. That way he has a way to escape again. Finally, all the lawsuits going after Fazbear Entertainment end, and lucky for them, nothing was proven in the court of law. So, Fazbear Entertainment then starts the development of Help Wanted again, this time hiring a different company. We don't actually get the name for this company, but just to make things easier, let's name them Steel Wool Studios. Now, during the development of the game, Steel Wool actually finds the tapes that Tape Girl was leaving, but they don't take the warnings on the tapes seriously. In fact, they think that the story that Tape Girl is telling is just part of the lore that they're supposed to add to the game. And they believe what Fazbear Entertainment is saying is that that indie game developer that apparently badmouthed Fazbear Entertainment was in fact making games in order to badmouth the company, instead of trying to make games off of the real stories that happened in Fazbear Entertainment's past. So instead of removing the tapes like they should have, they're instead adding these tapes as hidden collectibles, similar to the tokens that you can find throughout the game. None of the tapes are more hidden than any of the tokens, and Tape Girl says that you're gonna only find these tapes if you are in fact a developer who is looking for things like this. None of these tapes are actually hidden. They're collectibles in the game. Steel Wool put these collectibles into the game, not realizing that they were an actual danger to people if they had the Vanny mask. But luckily, since almost nobody owns the Vanny mask anymore, almost nobody gets infected with the Glitchtrap virus, especially on the initial release. But notice how I said almost no one owns these masks anymore. I'm not saying that no one has them. They're 30 to 40 years old, so they're going to be really hard to come by, but I do think one character in particular still has his mask from back in the early 80s. Cassie's father, who had the Bonnie mask back in '83, and I think this was more than just a regular plastic mask that he wore. I think this is a version of the Vanny mask, so whenever he pulls that thing out of storage and puts it on in order to play Help Wanted, he gets infected with the Glitchtrap virus. So, Fazbear Entertainment sells Help Wanted to the public and uses the profits from the game in order to start building the Pizzaplex. In fact, Help Wanted 1 sells so well that Mr. Burrows comes up with an idea in order to further advertise the construction of the Pizzaplex. He has Steel Wool work on a DLC for Help Wanted that will include an ending where you can see the construction of the Pizzaplex. And this is smart because if he's relying just off of the Pizzaplex being built and billboards around the Pizzaplex, only locals are going to know that it exists. But if he puts it into the video game that sold millions of copies worldwide, everyone will know that this thing is going to exist soon, and everyone is going to want to be there whenever the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Freddy Fazbear's Pizzaplex is finished. So the Dreadbear DLC begins development, and around this time, this is whenever Vanessa decides that she's going to make her Vanny costume. She's been hunkered down over at the Fazbear Funtime Services for a while, but she has plans of moving to the Pizzaplex once it's finished construction. So the Dreadbear DLC is released to the world, and everyone waits with anticipation for the grand opening of the Pizzaplex. And soon after it is opened, that is whenever Vanessa puts in a transfer request from the Fazbear Funtime Services to the Pizzaplex as their head security guard. But during the interview process, many people note that she doesn't have the proper qualifications. But she still somehow gets the job anyway, and that's thanks to Mr. Burrows, one guy at the top of the chain, making sure that he has eyes on the inside in case anything in their plan goes wrong. And at this point, this is whenever Edwin Murray returns to Fazbear Entertainment in order to make new animatronics for the brand new Pizzaplex. To be honest, he probably came earlier in the timeline, considering in the books, he's the only person on the board that Mr. Burrows is not allowed to fire. He probably comes at the beginning of the new Fazbear Entertainment era, but this is the only time that he becomes important because he's making the new animatronics. He makes all the glam rocks, he makes DJ Music Man, and he makes all the staff bots. So he begins working on the new animatronics for the new building. Now, for a while now, Cassie's father was getting this weird feeling in his head, this almost voice that was telling him he needs to return back to his old stomping grounds, back to where he used to grow up in about 1985. And when the Pizzaplex opens, that feeling only got stronger. So he decides, you know what? I'm going to apply to the Pizzaplex and try and get a job there, since it'll maybe quell this old nostalgia feeling that I'm getting. And he manages to get a position at the Pizzaplex. Now this leads into the events of Help Wanted 2, where we are literally starting the game by sitting in our orientation. And these events lead all the way through the rest of the timeline, considering that there are things that are happening in Help Wanted 2 that take place before and after Security Breach, and leading all the way up to Ruin. Now, real quick, we're going to talk about what Cassie's dad does after he gets hired at the Pizzaplex, because he kind of goes on a little bit of a side quest for a little bit. You see, after he gets hired, Fazbear Entertainment gives him a brand new Vanny mask that they say is supposed to help the technicians do their job around the Pizzaplex. So now that Cassie's dad is working at the Pizzaplex and he's constantly putting on and taking off that Vanny mask, that little voice in his head that told him to apply to the Pizzaplex in the first place starts getting louder, giving him more commands. And some of them are pretty simple at first, things that he would probably be doing on his job anyway, like decorate some of the staff bots for the customers, or switch out the cake in Freddy's chest for the next kid's birthday party. But some start getting a little intense, like changing the personality of the daycare attendant back to Sun and Moon. This is basically Glitchtrap's way of trying to get more control over Cassie's father, giving him tasks that require him to put on and take the mask off more so that Glitchtrap becomes louder in his head, and giving him tasks that push him to do things that he wouldn't normally do, like changing the personality of the daycare attendant, or maybe even killing his favorite character, Bonnie. This was the perfect way Glitchtrap saw to prove that Cassie's father was right for the job, that he was completely under his control, killing his favorite animatronic and making sure no one knew what actually happened to him. So using the skills that he acquired from around the Pizzaplex and his title, he lured Bonnie back behind the bowling alley and ambushed him with a group of staff bots, killing him and leaving his body where no one would find it. And at first, this is all that Glitchtrap wanted. He now knew that Cassie's father would do anything that he asked. That is, until he realized that Cassie's father was a father. After seeing Cassie on her birthday at the Pizzaplex, Glitchtrap realized that he might need some more assets under his belt and told Cassie's father to make sure that she was also under his control. But Cassie's father refused. He didn't want Cassie to go through the same things that he did. Cassie's father realized that he needed a way out of Glitchtrap's control and realized that his way out might be through those new arcade cabinets that the Pizzaplex just got. Princess Quest. After Cassie's father plays all 3 arcade cabinets, he realizes that he is no longer under Glitchtrap's control. But Glitchtrap isn't too thrilled about this. He just lost one of his best assets, and he's gonna hold a bit of a grudge. Now, while Cassie's father is having his weird spiritual journey thing with Glitchtrap, I think it's important to note how Glitchtrap gets a hold of the Pizzaplex, because basically every point on this timeline forward requires Glitchtrap to have some sort of control over something in the Pizzaplex, including taking over Cassie's father's mind. And this basically all just starts with Mr. Burrows and Edwin. Mr. Burrows wants to add AI to the Pizzaplex, thinking that it's going to make the Pizzaplex better. Like literally every tech company that we have right now. Please stop adding AI to everything. I don't need it that badly. Basically what happens is Mr. Burrows wants to add AI to the Pizzaplex. That way the AI can create stories for the kids rather than the people that they currently pay who are making the stories for the kids. In doing so, Mr. Burrows and Edwin kind of get themselves stuck inside of the room where the computer is that has this AI on it, and they kind of suffocate and die because the room is airtight. Now, how exactly do these 2 bodies never get discovered or reported to the police? Well, originally what I thought happened is that this happened after the all-staff meeting, after all the employees are replaced by the staff bots, and most likely Vanessa kills them all. That way, Vanessa is the only human working at the Pizzaplex, and if she's the one to discover these 2 bodies, then she's just gonna cover up their deaths. But Escape the Pizzaplex gives us a completely different reason as to why this happened. There's a new animatronic in this book called the Reagent that is apparently meant to find and destroy any organic matter. That includes people. So it very well could be that the Reagent found the bodies in the storyteller tree where they're keeping the new AI for the storyteller and got rid of the bodies. It's not exactly clear what happens, but we know that the thing uses chemicals in order to try and get rid of any organic matter, so it probably wasn't pretty. So now that the AI has basically weaseled its way into the Pizzaplex and has full control over most things, it starts sending out invitations to kids in order to have a fun day at the Pizzaplex. And Gregory is one of these kids to get these invitations. He gets an invite through the VIP system to come to the Pizzaplex. And this is basically Glitchtrap's way of trying to recruit more people into his following. Gregory realizes that if he doesn't get enough points for the VIP system, he will be stuck in the Pizzaplex. So he tries his best in order to try and get the points that are needed. But in comes Vanessa, who happens to have a modified VIP mask, which looks very similar to the Vanny mask that we know and love. Vanessa says that the only way to escape the Pizzaplex is to put on the mask, and it'll multiply your score on every game you play in order to make it easier to escape. So Gregory gladly grabs the mask and puts it on. And he puts it on, and he puts it on, and he keeps putting it on until eventually there's no more Gregory. It's GGY. So now that Gregory is basically the perfect servant for Glitchtrap, there's really no reason for him to leave the Pizzaplex anymore. So he begins living in the Pizzaplex until one day where he finally meets Cassie at her birthday party where no one shows up. She, without being under Glitchtrap's control, is almost just as good at hacking as Gregory is. And with a little bit more coaching through Glitchtrap, she could be even better. So he sets her eyes on a new target. This is when Cassie's father realizes that he has made a huge error. He does not want Cassie to also be under Glitchtrap's control, so he needs to make sure that he is out of Glitchtrap's control. That way he can protect her without fear of Glitchtrap doing anything. So he plays all 3 princess quests and breaks free from Glitchtrap's control. Now, like I said earlier, Glitchtrap is not too happy with this. Cassie's father was one of his best recruits, and now he is broken free from his control. And like I said earlier, he holds a grudge. So he comes up with the ultimate plan in order to get back at Cassie's father. The all-staff meeting. With Vanessa still under Glitchtrap's control, she takes the lead on this plan, collecting all the employees in one room and sending the reagent after them. All the employees except one, Cassie's father. You see, Glitchtrap didn't exactly enjoy the little rebellion that Cassie's father had given him, so he decides to give him a special treatment in this case. He takes Cassie's father and transfers his consciousness and maybe some body parts inside of a staff bot, forcing him to continue working at the Pizzaplex, maybe even without him knowing it. And now with Cassie's father out of the way, Cassie has a lot more freedom. So Gregory decides to start asking Cassie to hang out at the Pizzaplex after hours. We are going to go over the book, so if you don't want any spoilers, either click away or skip ahead. Is everyone gone who wants to read Escape the Pizzaplex without any spoilers? Good, I guess we can continue now. So after who knows how many nights of Cassie and Gregory hanging out at the Pizzaplex at night, we eventually lead into Escape the Pizzaplex. Now the book makes it well known that this is not the first time that Cassie and Gregory stay the night at the Pizzaplex. And if you're staying that many nights at the Pizzaplex without a parent worrying, or even worrying that your parent is going to worry, something's not right at home. Now, earlier I talked about how if you look at Escape the Pizzaplex in a very particular lens, you're going to get a completely different timeline than what we have here. We're going to go over that first, because in the book, you never bump into Vanessa. Now, you also don't bump into Chica. That's not saying that Chica doesn't exist, but if Vanessa's not there and she's the night guard, that raises some suspicions. Like the FNaF series has a character who is supposed to be hanging around the Pizzaplex at night that is supposed to be a danger to us. And she's not there. Instead, they go for the reagent, this animatronic that has chemicals on its back that could spew them at you, and apparently they're strong enough chemicals to kill people. Now, that character alone could be the reason that Vanessa is not here. If that cleaning bot, the reagent, is hanging out in the Pizzaplex and it's set to kill any organic matter, then Vanessa obviously shouldn't be at the Pizzaplex because she's organic. But there are a few nights where the reagent isn't there. So why is Vanessa not there on those nights? Like, if Vanessa isn't hired by Escape the Pizzaplex, that means that most of this timeline is wrong. That means that Vanessa wasn't the one to get Gregory under Glitchtrap's control. Gregory most likely got Vanessa under Glitchtrap's control. That also means that she wasn't hired by Mr. Burrows. In fact, they probably have never interacted. But somebody higher up needs to hire Vanessa because she doesn't have the proper qualifications. And I guess it could be the AI, but then that's just not as interesting. But like I said earlier, we're looking at Escape the Pizzaplex in a very particular set of lenses. Lenses that pretty much break a lot of timelines. But also, like I said earlier, the reason why Vanessa's probably not there is the reagent itself. It is an animatronic that is designed to get rid of any organic matter, something that Vanessa very much is. So the Pizzaplex probably just schedules her to not show up on nights that the reagent is active, or have her go around the Pizzaplex in areas that the reagent is not going to visit that night. So if we're not looking at this book with a very particular set of lenses, what exactly are we getting from Escape the Pizzaplex? Why did I have to wait for this book to come out for this timeline to work? Well, Escape the Pizzaplex tells us that what happens at the end of Ruin is either not true or there's something else that we're missing from Escape the Pizzaplex to the beginning of Security Breach. Let me explain. At the end of Ruin, we get a scene of Roxy getting deactivated, which is a very heartfelt scene that Cassie is forced to go through, except whatever Roxy is saying here is not true. She says that the last time she has seen Cassie was on her birthday, specifically the 11th, because she's number 1 twice. I've listened to this like 8 times trying to figure out why she's saying this, because Escape the Pizzaplex makes it clear that her birthday has already happened, but we get to see Roxy in this book. Now, yes, the exact words out of Roxy's mouth are not, "I have not seen you since your birthday or birthday party," but they're very similar to that. She starts talking about how Cassie hasn't been here in a while and how she missed her. And then she goes into how Cassie's birthday is on the 11th and how she likes carrot cake and it's her special day. If you put both of these together, you get "I haven't seen you since your birthday on the 11th, where we had carrot cake and had a grand old time." Roxy hasn't seen Cassie in the events of Escape the Pizzaplex. Or at the very least, Roxy needs to forget Escape the Pizzaplex and anything leading up to it where she interacted with Cassie, which sounds a lot to me like getting rid of GGY. Freddy, Gregory, and Roxy all need to forget the events that GGY took place in, which is going to involve Cassie and Escape the Pizzaplex. So by the time of Security Breach, everyone has forgotten who Gregory is. Now, the most likely thing to have happened is that somebody played the Balloon Boy arcade cabinet, causing GGY to be released from Gregory, and Gregory being removed from all the animatronics' memories. This would cause everyone to not know what's happening at the beginning of Security Breach and possibly leaving behind GGY's code in the animatronics, making them more aggressive. But it still leaves the question, who played the arcade cabinet? We're still no closer to figuring out who released GGY from Gregory. Honestly, I'm not sure who could do it. I don't think Gregory could do it because he's way too far under Glitchtrap's control. I don't think Cassie would do it because it doesn't seem like she wants to come back to the Pizzaplex after Escape the Pizzaplex. I don't think Vanny could do it either because, again, she's under Glitchtrap's control. If she wanted to, she would try to release herself. There's not too many people who could do it, and everyone just doesn't seem like they would. But that leads into the beginning of Security Breach, where we see Gregory waking up inside of Freddy's chest, and we have the events of Security Breach play out. Specifically, the events that lead to all three animatronics being destroyed and the Princess Quest ending going through. Now, I can maybe see that one of these animatronics doesn't get destroyed, considering that you don't need all three animatronic upgrades in order to do that ending. And the only one that I can see that we don't do is Monty, because his damage does not match from Security Breach to Ruin. Yes, he is missing his legs, but he is far more damaged in Ruin. So after Gregory beats Princess Quest, him, Freddy, and Vanessa all leave the Pizzaplex ready to try and stop Glitchtrap from whatever's coming next. But that doesn't exactly mean that the Pizzaplex is done with the damage yet. No. We still have the blob hiding out in the underground of the Pizzaplex. So it starts burrowing its way out of the Pizzaplex, causing lots of tremors that a lot of people believe are earthquakes. And because of these earthquakes, the Pizzaplex goes under heavy damage. A giant hole shows up in the lobby, causing people to not be able to visit the Pizzaplex anymore, which means that the Pizzaplex has to close for reconstruction. But just because no one is allowed at the Pizzaplex because it's under reconstruction doesn't mean no one shows up. In fact, a lot of people begin graffitiing the Pizzaplex whenever no one is around. And of course, there is one particular character who does return to the Pizzaplex, Cassie. The Mimic decides that that plan of trying to get Cassie on their side was a good idea, and they're going to move forward with it. But the way that they're going to lure Cassie in is to try and act like they're Gregory. After all, Cassie knows that Gregory hangs out at the Pizzaplex all the time, basically day and night. So whenever the Pizzaplex falls in on itself, she believes that he was still in there whenever it happened. And it's about this time where Cassie's father finishes the events of Help Wanted 2. He didn't realize it, but he was helping Glitchtrap the entire time. He was the one to get Cassie into the Pizzaplex, and he is the one handing her the mask to make sure that she is the next Glitchtrap disciple. After literally watching his daughter put the mask on and start the insanity that he went through for God knows how long, he realizes that he needs to stop Glitchtrap and manages to get Vanny on his side. Vanny crushes Glitchtrap, destroying the last remnant of Glitchtrap other than the one that is in Cassie's head. Well, I mean, sort of. There's still something that Glitchtrap had in mind in order to try and get the upper hand. You see, he realized that taking over other people's bodies wasn't working. They could break free from his control, and taking over the animatronics only gave him access to things inside of the Pizzaplex. So, he needed his own body. It seemed like something that Vanessa was also on the verge of trying to figure out. I mean, she did make the Burntrap body for Glitchtrap to inhabit, but the Burntrap body was broken. It didn't work well. It still needed to be charged every now and then in order to work, which still limited it to the Pizzaplex. No, Glitchtrap needed something else. Glitchtrap needed something better. So Glitchtrap decides that instead of taking over somebody else's body or using an animatronic in the Pizzaplex that'll limit him to the Pizzaplex, he's going to grow his own body using Fazgoo. Yes, I am 100% serious. We are going to put Fazgoo on this timeline, or at least something very similar to it, since the book's version of Fazgoo steals the body parts from the original host in order to make a clone of the original host. And since there isn't an original Glitchtrap for it to steal body parts from, the Fazgoo needs to be tweaked slightly to work in the timeline, but it seems to be growing some sort of body for Glitchtrap, since this doesn't look like an animatronic emerging from this charging station. Now, after the ending of Help Wanted 2, Cassie gets her invite back to the Pizzaplex from what she assumes is Gregory, but turns out to actually be the Mimic trying to act like Gregory in order to get her to release it down from the basement of the Pizzaplex. Now, while Cassie's going through the Pizzaplex, she actually manages to help 3 of the animatronics that are still roaming about. She manages to find Chica and give her her voice box back. She finds Sun and Moon and manages to merge their personalities together so that there's no dark side and light side anymore. And she manages to snap Roxy out of that weird mental state where she only wants to hunt down and find Gregory. But after doing all that, Cassie makes her way down into the basement of the Pizzaplex, where she unknowingly releases the Mimic. And what I believe most likely happens out of the 3 options that we are given is that she hops into that elevator and is dropped by Gregory. Now, even though Cassie was dropped in the elevator, I do think that she makes it out of this alive, since we do hear Roxy after the elevator is dropped, implying that she is alive in order to hear Roxy. So it will be interesting to see where this timeline goes after this point, because that's going to be where we see Cassie being controlled by Glitchtrap. And with that, I'm going to leave this video here. I'm sure in a few months, whenever Secret of the Mimic comes out, it'll say something completely different from what I have on the timeline, and it's going to change pretty much everything. But until then, I'm pretty happy with where I left this. Sure, I might have went a little crazy by adding a lot of the book stuff to the timeline, specifically the Fazgoo part, but I genuinely do believe that everything fits into the timeline pretty well. But what do you guys think? Do you think that me adding the books to the timeline completely ruined it? Is there a detail that I missed that completely changes everything about this timeline? Let me know with a comment down below. Or if you want, you could just tell me how much you like my new hair. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button, to subscribe, and ring that bell, or whatever else YouTube has you do nowadays. Thanks again for watching to the very end, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye! Showtime.